Zhiqiu is coming. Okay. Hello.
Yes, hello. Hey, hello, Liang Jie. Hey, Dr. Neville, nice to see you again.
It's good to see you. That you're here this evening.
Yeah, that's
or this morning.
Evening, actually. I'm on East Coast too.
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's start it. So it's time to get our program started. As actually 6 years ago, we met Dr. Neville in the East-West Philosophy Conference. And we have a very good communication, and he gave us a very good lecture. And we agreed to make documentaries for those great achievement for the professors and researchers. So now it's about 6 years. We are, very glad to have Dr. Neville to give his summary of his academic career. And the topic is Confucius ethics and religions today. So we have those Chinese introduction to our audience, and many Chinese people wondering why American philosopher want to be a Confucius Christian, and it's a very interesting story. And we introduced you as 14 years old, young boy, but doing some research on a very hard topic. So that's you will give us your brief of your life, and also we have those in Chinese word we call it 著作等身. So maybe. That means if all your books write on your bamboo, that books will be full of your house. So that's that's part of the books, and the things that it's come from a history is that someone very young, 5 years old, one is very smart, he read books. Every day read books like he's as tall as his body. So I know those very important philosophy books. These three. I have those books in my shelf, and I read some of them. It's very profound, but it's very important works. But when I discuss with my friends, most people like the middle of this book, because this book is including your own life, your life experience, and also it's talking about the time. So when I read this book, it starts from a scientific discussion. That's a very good for the scientific world, especially the time is very hot topic, both in scientific world and also for the public. So this is all those my introduction. I introduce you to all my students and all my classmates and all my friends. I said that's a great research, and a doctor graduated from Yale University, but he's humble like elementary student. Compare our elementary student, both like a doctor, and this Chinese student, almost every Chinese know who he is. So I just stop here and then let Dr. Zhiqiu to take over this post.
Okay. You want me to speak Mandarin or speak English?
Yes, if you want. Just give it a brief.
Pardon me. You want me to?
No need. Actually, just go with Dr. Neville and then start.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Dr. Neville, probably you wanted Dr. Neville to go directly to the lecture, into the lecture.
Yeah, you can make another introduction. What's those books? How this book is important?
Maybe some of us, maybe just to speak Mandarin. Do you, Dr. Neville, do you mind if I give a Mandarin introduction so everybody can probably understand it better? Okay. Dr. Robert Cumming Neville, 他的中文名字叫南乐山，南是南方的南，乐是快乐山水的山。南乐山取自智者乐水，仁者乐山啊，所以他把自己他事实上更倾向于这个仁爱这个良善goodness 这一块所以他给自己取名叫南乐山。是波士顿儒家的主要的代表人物曾经他写过一本书叫做 Boston Confucianism， 就是波士顿儒家那么有这个是波士顿儒家的发起人，也是代表人物。那么在Boston 这个地方呢，有一条河叫 Charles River， Charles River 把这个整个城市分为两半，北边呢就是 Harvard University 跟 MIT。南边呢就是 Boston University， 那么这个 这个 Boston 的这个 Confucianism 呢也有两派，一个叫做北派，一个叫做南派。北派呢是这个以杜维明包庇德他们为代表的荀学派这个思孟学派这个以杜维明为代表的这个思孟学派，孟子子思的是一个派。然后南部呢这个 Charles River 的南边呢是以南乐山和这个白狮廊作为代表的这个南派。那么北派主要侧重的是孟子子思的思想南派主要侧重的是荀子的思想所以基本上这是这个波士顿儒家的南派和北派。那么我自己本身呢是在2001年到2014年，蛮长，大概13年左右时间在 Boston 的南派这边学习。我自己的导师，我的论文的 first reader 就是就是南乐山教授我的 second reader 呢就是白狮廊教授所以我自己从他们那边受到非常非常多的这种的益处事实上我的儒学，我的汉学的背景基本上就是从他们那边来的。我非常的感激他们。那今天我们非常有幸请到南乐山教授，尽管我们在座的人不一定很多，但是我们知道南乐山就像刚才这个梁姐所说的，他是著作等身，这个是这个字面意义上的著作等身，他真的把他的著作摞起来。我们一直说他写作的速度比我们读书的速度还要快，而且写的都是这个是纯的这种形而上学的这个哲学性的著作是具有原创性的，非常难得的当代的哲学家。他曾经担任过美国的哲学会的会长，担任过在美国的中国哲学会的会长所以这个是这个当代的非常杰出的一位哲学家跟神学家所以我们非常有幸请到他来讲他自己的学术生涯的自述我读了这篇文章以后，也帮他简单做了一些翻译我觉得非常荣幸。如果我能够很早一些读到他的这篇文章的话，那我会少走很多歪路因为他著作那么多，我们在读他的著作的时候，经常有的时候有一些地方会读不懂。如果我很早就知道这个学术自述的话，那我想我会知道很多南教授的他的思想的这些路径想法背景所以我们非常有幸今天请到南乐山教授那么我们就把接下来的时间交给他 我们可能没有中文的直接的翻译，但是梁姐你可以把我的翻译放在这个chat room 里面，让大家可以一边看中英文对照或者对大家更多的帮助你收到我给你的 version 吗？
我收到了，已经放进来了。
Okay. Yes, Dr. Neville, I've translated your lecture into Chinese, into Chinese. So we will post it in the chat room, so you can just read, and nobody will interpret. People will just follow the flow, follow your lecture. So just go ahead, and it's all yours now.
Okay, so well, first of all, I'm very glad to be here. I'm glad that you two are here. And this is my third lecture to this group. And let me remind you of my arguments for contemporary Confucianism. In my previous lecture, I urged you to consider Confucianism to be a global philosophy, not merely a Chinese or East Asian philosophy. And I'll just go through with the whole lecture. Yes.
Yes.
This means two things. On the one hand, it recognizes that people from China and other East Asian countries are spreading across the world. This entails taking Confucianism to Boston, Leningrad, Chennai, Johannesburg, Mogadishu, and Timbuktu. Each of these places has its own culture, or rather its own mix of cultures. Also, those places now are already changing their cultures, so that as they welcome Chinese immigrants, they are making a place for Confucianism. But you know how immigrant communities go. The first generation keeps pretty much to its own homeland culture, keeps it private, and speaks Chinese. The second generation tries very hard to learn the new languages, to fit in, and to be patriotic for the new culture. Then the third generation looks back to the first and tries to recover something of the old heritage, modifying it with the new culture, but reasserting some of the old values and ways of life. The problem for globalization is that the new culture is radically different in the cities I mentioned. Boston, where there have been Chinese for over 200 years. Leningrad, where Orthodox Russia provides an entirely different home. Chennai, where there have been Chinese traders for at least 2,000 years. Johannesburg, where resurgent Black nationalism is an issue. Mogadishu, where civil wars continue. And Timbuktu, which is an outpost now, but in the year 1500 had the world's largest library. As the Chinese communities in those cities grow, they will relate to and in part become the diverse cultures of those places. On the other hand, Confucianism is appealing not only to Chinese people, but to others who have been brought up originally in different cultures. I know most about Boston Confucianism, of course, being a descendant myself of immigrants from Northwestern Europe in the 1600s, raised in the Midwest next to Cahokia, the great Osage Native American city in southern Illinois that was as large in 1100 as London or Paris, but now is mounds in a park. The meritocratic, freedom-loving culture of Boston is wholly different from the Russian culture of Leningrad, that is, Marxism laid down upon Tsarism. Non-Chinese natives of Chennai, Johannesburg, Mogadishu, and Timbuktu all have their own cultures, different from one another, and probably already pluralistic in themselves. How can Confucianism be adapted to these cultures so as to include non-East Asians such as I? The answer is with amazing diversity. Perhaps the greatest change from ancient and Neo-Confucian cultures to the global Confucianism is this sudden appropriation of such a diversity of cultures. Probably we exaggerate the monolithic quality of Chinese culture. Contemporary Chinese culture is different from the revolutionary Chinese culture of a century ago, which is different again from the Qing dynasty culture of 100 years before that. But Confucianism has been continuous, if changing, throughout this. Nowadays, global Confucianism has a far more radical cultural diversity than was imagined even a century ago. Nevertheless, there are fundamental Confucian themes that find their expression at some level or other in all the globe. One theme is the importance of families across the globe. The nature of families is very different from culture to culture. For some, the Chinese model of a very large family of clans is still important, with special duties of various clan members to the whole. The smaller model of close family members relating to one another through the generations and often through common tasks is often prevalent, although neither in Boston nor Western Russia. In Russia, the bloodlines have been greatly weakened, and professional ties are more important for defining families, especially as women have been educated in the new, for them, professions. In Boston, blood ties are still important, but living locally with one's family is far less so, with families split across the country. I was raised in the Midwest, now live in Boston, and have daughters with their families in Madison, Wisconsin, and Los Angeles, California. Regardless of the shape of our families, even to blood ties, COVID-19 has brought them to consciousness with an urgency Confucians would love. Even if one's family is only a group of friends or of co-workers or of people you just find yourself with, the Confucians say it is important to sustain it. A second and related theme is the importance of verticality in relationship. Verticality, that is up and down, is expressed in filial piety, both upwards to parents and grandparents and downward to children and grandchildren. It's also expressed in the recognition of the elderly and the young in neighborhoods, social relations, and economic ones. In all these relations, the verticality is recognized and advocated. Many of them are ritualized in countless ways. With the spread of diverse communities across the globe, these vertical relations are very different in different places. Nevertheless, part of being human in a community, according to all Confucians, is to be attentive to the vertical relations that obtain. A third theme is friendship. You know that the Analects begins with a paean to friendship, especially long-distance friendship, where the friend's visit is unusual and very important. Friendships take many forms, especially in the varied cultural centers of a global Confucianism. With Confucianism, there is a certain equality among friends, however different their circumstances. This is especially important because friends are a bit contrary to family relations, reaching across differences, whereas family relations are a matter of loyalty even when there is no friendship. Friendship relations involve loyalty of a different sort, where there is nothing like blood kinship to demand it. Friendship is the creation of novel bonds determined by the circumstances of one's friends, global Confucianism makes these novel circumstances all novel. A fourth Confucian theme is what used to be called the role of the scholar official. In a monolithic culture, this means holding office in recognized ways while reflecting in scholarly fashion more generally. In modern, very diverse societies, it means taking public offices very seriously. Public offices differ greatly from one context to the next. They also differ according to different social classes and according to different stages of life. They differ as well according to how well the Confucian community is integrated into the larger culture of the situation, whether that community is singular or is itself divided, and so forth. Perhaps the greatest difference among global communities is how well the women are integrated with the men, whether their roles are strictly or barely distinguished, and whether their roles are public. Despite their emphasis on holding public roles, scholarly reflection is never missing. Copies of the 4 books are on everyone's desk. No matter how ritualistically the public roles are defined, their occupants reflect on how they fit in and on other things as well. Whatever the differences in the circumstances, Confucians take special care to promote these public roles and to train all Confucians to hold to them as part of being human. A fifth theme, harder to identify in the modern age with such differences among the communities, is mutual recognition. Most Confucians recognize that they are Confucians, that other Confucians live in other places with different customs, and that communication across traditional lines is important. To be sure, only the more sophisticated Confucians in any of the stretch of cultures knows much about the others, and there are different ways of identifying those others. The Confucians in Africa are largely there for economic reasons, and perhaps are only temporary. They know the others in terms of economic matters. The Confucians in Chennai have so long been part of the Chennai culture that they mark the identity of other groups in terms of their relations to China. The Russian and Boston Confucians are likely to see commonalities in terms of social structures, but with very different models of what those structures are. Yet it is important for all the Confucian communities to sense their commonalities with others. A sixth theme of contemporary Confucianism is to honor the previous generation, especially those in one's family. Most likely, photographs take the place of plaques these days, and perhaps one's ancestors' burial places are too far to visit. But something like this is part of being human for most Confucians. Perhaps this honoring of the past is religious. It is taken with very great seriousness. Some Confucians practice Protestant religiosity, going to church regularly, celebrating Confucius and one's own ancestors' birthdays, and so forth. But this is not universal, and it is a very late borrowing from Christian modes of organization. The more usual Confucian mode of honoring was a special place in one's house or apartment for plaques. I doubt myself that this is a genuine part of religion. Religion I define as having 3 related focal points. The first, and the one most likely to be recognized by scholars, is having cognitive approaches to whatever is taken to be ultimate. These cognitive approaches range from myths and legends through popular beliefs to highly sophisticated philosophical theology. The history of religions count many, many forms of ultimacy. From our standpoint, many of them look rather non-ultimate. But to the extent they really are ultimate, behind whatever else they symbolize, they are religious. Honoring the previous generation is not ultimate in this sense. I shall come to a proper Confucian sense of cognitive approaches to ultimacy shortly. The second focal point of religion is that it determines one's existential standing in ultimately important ways. Religion is an expression of what Paul Tillich called one's ultimate concern. Honoring ancestors might come closer to being religious in this sense because sometimes the task of honoring others might be precisely how one determines oneself. But it is paradoxical, if not really contradictory, to pretend that honoring ancestors is a way of making oneself determinate. Religion's third focal point is the practical ways of life that recognize ultimacy in whatever way one recognizes that. These practical ways could be prayers, worship, communal life, or living as a hermit, or whatever. The praying is spirituality. Worship is liturgics. Communal life is politics. Hermetic existence is social withdrawal, and so forth. But all these are religious only insofar as they serve ultimacy. The practices can be studied on their own, but with little, sometimes they go on with little or no real connection with ultimacy, but only when they do are they properly religious, according to my definition. Honoring ancestors is not particularly related to ultimacy. In fact, in itself, not at all. How then is Confucianism religious? How does it relate to ultimacy? It's important to recognize that many of the things that are genuinely religious in other cultures are not so. About the year 1000, before the Common Era, Confucianism's own ancestors forswore worship of the sky god in favor of belief in heaven, which has no personal traits. Although the vast majority of Chinese people believed in gods and goddesses, Confucius set them aside. So did Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi. Whatever the gods and goddesses meant to the Confucians and philosophical Taoists, they did not mean anything ultimate. What did mean something ultimate to these people, however, was nothingness, emptiness, the absolutely simple. These were concepts fit for the most sophisticated, Lao Tzu, Wang Bi, Zhou Dongyi, and others like them. More ordinary Confucians rested with metaphors for these conceptions, metaphors of sudden emergence, like the flowering of buds, the rising of springs from the ground, and such like. But whether metaphorically or more literally, this was a naturalistic conception, not a personal theistic one. Before the era of globalization, the Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, paganism, and Islam, believed in personal gods whose main trait was intentional agency, making things on purpose. Even when these were made so sophisticated as to be indeterminate, like Aquinas's pure act of to be, or Calvin's purely infinite God, they carried along the traits of active persons. When the South Asian religions of Buddhism and Hinduism developed, they took their metaphorical start from personal gods, but developed them as involved with consciousness per se. Agency was the very trait they thought should be excluded from any decent conception of God. The Buddhists thought that the God of consciousness was really nothingness, and the Hindus thought of it as absolutely pure consciousness, but both carried along their metaphors of consciousness and meditation into the ideas of ultimacy. Agency and consciousness are two ideas of personhood, but the Confucians of East Asia were adherents of nature, and nature's metaphors were in their representations of ultimacy. Where do we stand today with regard to global Confucianism's religion? As I suggested earlier, not every Confucian has much religion. For many Confucians, ethics alone is important, and ultimacy can be ignored. I suspect the reason for this can be seen in contrast to the personal kinds of theism in Western and Southern forms of religion. They both promise some kind of plan for human life, some kind of religious ethics. Thus, to figure out ethics, we should look to God's promises, his purposes for us, his destiny in nothingness or in absorption into the absolute. Please do not take me as suggesting that the Western and Southern religions have worked out an agreeable religion, but they do agree very generally in a line of personal metaphors. The Confucians reject all that and believe instead in a naturalistic line. For those Confucians who believe in a religion, I believe that the contemporary version goes something like this. Thinking is determinate. And so we begin thinking with all the apparatus of determinate reality, whatever that might turn out to be. Any thinking about the Creator begins with the creation itself. So we cannot think about the Creator prior to creation in any sense, only the Creator with creation. There is no one behind the many or apart from the many or existent in itself. There is only the Creator creating. The Creator creating is not contingent on anything else, nor a necessary being, because necessity and ordinary contingency are among the created determinate things. You can see why theistic versions of ultimacy view Confucianism as atheistic, which literally it is. Nevertheless, the determinate created things need to be created by a singular act of creation that makes them all together. The determinate things are harmonies of essential and conditional components. The conditional components come from things' interactions, but their essential components mark their own existence. Both kinds of components are necessary. Without conditional ones, things would not be related, and hence could not be determinate with respect to one another. But without essential components, things would not be independent and real on their own, and hence not determinate. Determinateness requires that things simply be made together as independent and interdependent creatures. Now, I'm a bit sorry to present such a complex metaphysical idea, particularly Jishu has to worry about translating that in the long run. Perhaps not many of you are metaphysicians, but Confucians who pursue the ultimate are such metaphysicians. And so I have to sketch my theory. How do Confucians symbolize this? Historically, a line of metaphorical development goes like this. Lao Tzu distinguished the Tao that can be spoken of from that which cannot be spoken of. Said the former depends upon the latter, and thus has spoken of that latter. Huan Bi said that nothingness precedes the fullness of being, and explicated this in terms of a being that can be known as showing non-being. Zhou Zunyi claimed that absolute non-being and the great ultimate begin all at the same time and are connected by the word ga, which is totally ambiguous, I'm afraid. On the one hand, it means that the former precedes the latter, and the latter precedes everything else. On the other hand, it means only from the perspective of the latter can we know about the former. This is exactly the situation I described earlier, expressed metaphorically. So the ultimate for Confucians just happens and is known only when we have determinate things, such as intelligibility. Let us suppose now that you have thoroughly grasped all of this and are filled with my Confucian cognitions of ultimacy. I know this supposition is false, but that's okay. How is this religious for those who are religious? I suppose the largest determining point is the pursuit of the second focal point of religion, the existential determination of the self. I pursue ultimacy because it promises to define me ultimately. But I recognize the Creator creating. I suddenly give up any special concerns and accept the creation of the whole. The creation of the whole is more important than my family, my success in attending to verticality, friends, fostering scholar officials, the larger community, or honoring previous generations. It's not that these fail at all to be important. They are important human values, but they are ultimately unimportant, only proximately important. If they were not proximately important, Taoism would be preferable to Confucianism. But these human values are not ultimately important. Ultimate importance is given to the Creator creating. Creation creating sounds as if it were something going on in time, but it is not. Time itself is determinate, with differences of before and after. So the ultimate cannot be a first cause at beginning, nor can it be a final cause in time, something drawing us on. Perhaps it is an immense present cause, encompassing all times within God's present view. But no, that gives up the theory that everything is determinate, including time, that is created. Rather, the Creator creating is completely eternal, non-temporal. For us within time, creation is indeed temporal, with some things created earlier, some for the future, and some for the present. We would never be able to experience the dynamics of temporality with all its decisions, where the ultimate, not present in the past as past, the future as future, and the present as present. But the creation of temporality itself takes place outside of time, in eternity. The recognition of the eternity of the Creator creating is part of the shock of encountering ultimate reality. The distinction between the real but proximate values and ultimate value of the world, and the shock of the eternity of the Creator creating, is not all that different for Confucianism as it is for many other religions. Christianity, for instance, emphasizes the proximate importance of discriminating love, that is, love that notes differences, and the ultimate importance of love for absolutely everything. It too stresses the eternity of creation and is forced to give up any personal characteristics of the Creator that attend its proximate representations. But perhaps you don't want to explore what Christianity means now, ultimately. The representation that I have given of the ways Confucians are religious, when they are spread across the globe. For those communities that grapple with the native cultures of Boston, Leningrad, Chennai, Johannesburg, Mogadishu, and Timbuktu, their approaches to the ultimate are different. In none of those places is the ancient Chinese story of rejecting Shangdi important, except perhaps to the very recent immigrants. So the whole group of Confucians who are religious across the globe will have conceptions of the creator creating with metaphoric trails from Boston's sciences, from Russian orthodoxy, from Chennai's ancient tunnels between Hinduism and Indian Confucianism, from Johannesburg's traits of Boers and nativism, from Mogadishu's warring mixtures of many native tribes, including ancient and modern Islam, and Timbuktu's dignified ancient Islam, its increasingly diminished presence and present unimportance. This is to say, global Confucianism will be genuinely global when its religion moves through all these paths to the shock of the creator creating that includes the determinations, whatever they are, shocks us with the eternity of creation, however temporal our lives are, and leaves us with the knowledge that most of our values are proximate, though real, and that ultimate value takes everything to be equally good and real. Thank you very much. I see that Zhang Chongying has joined us.
Yes.
Yeah, Bob, how are you?
All right, I'm fine. Glad to see you.
Good to see you.
徐老师，你来，我这有一些问题，你先做一个 summary。
Okay. Professor Chen, do you want to give some feedbacks?
Okay, you want me to say something?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was actually looking forward to see my old friend
Right.
level, but unfortunately today I was supposed to move the refrigerator from my old place. I have appointment, so I was late. Apologize for being late for your lecture. But anyway, I did look forward for this good occasion. I know Bob for a long time. He's a good friend. He's a true friend. I was talking about friendship. I maybe begin with this comment. Confucius said that a person should have a friend who has knowledge, has actually manifold knowledge, has to be knowledgeable. And then he has to be straightforward, frank and candid. That means honest and sincere. And finally, he should be considerate and forgiving. And you see the term liang in the Chinese means he can see from other points of view and who can understand the others and eventually get a deeper understanding of the other person. I think that view of true friendship is something I think very important for establishing not only friendship, maybe for establishing a society like the Boston Confucianism. So that's something I want to say first. About the Boston Confucianism, I do have some sustainable or some kind of recurring questions. I think in all the last maybe, you know, I've been teaching 50 years, and Bob is teaching also this probably as long as myself. You know, we see that the Confucianism as a philosophy become really, you know, influential. Probably started in last century, in the, well, maybe in the late part of the last century, when we have closer, you know, understanding and lectures, and particularly when we have established the Journal of Chinese Philosophy and the Society for Chinese Philosophy. So that particular establishment is very important to me. But then there's maybe one or two basic questions. One question is, Bob talked about both Confucianism basically in terms of Xunzi. He probably appreciate acknowledge, you know, the important ritualism, the important, you know, rich tradition of Li, and so Li is a fundamental reason for you to associate Confucianism with maybe the Christianity in some way, or maybe you feel that the Christianity does not have enough attention to Li. So Li as a humanistic, you know, this, you know, as a humanistic understanding, as humanistic behavior, as humanistic kind of symbolic gestures in community. I think that's to me, I know that's a key reason why you want to call your Confucianism Bostonian. I mean, to distinguish it, maybe you have your mind, maybe you have other type of Confucianism like mentions, or like the Book of Change, the I Ching-ish type of Confucianism as I have promoted. But the question which comes to my mind is often that Xunzi is a naturalist. As you know, he's a treatise on heaven, and he thinks that everything is natural, things happen naturally, and there's no particular divinity, and divinity is just a invention of the gentleman to make deep possible, to make self-moral cultivation possible. But for a deeper understanding, of course, this disguise is important, but which can make other people who are, you know, believe it. But the person who invented Li knows that what's the purpose of the Li is for harmony of society and for, you know, personal discipline of one's character. So that's something I think I'd like you to maybe expand it more. Now, secondly, in regard to that, now since Bob, you know, knows my work on I Ching and I Ching's ontology, I call the ontocosmological ontology. It started with a creative force. Now, creative force can be creative, but can be a source. But why it must be a creator's creating? When it cannot be a just creativity in a sense, like it is a source where this whole universe began. So in this way, now you in the Yizhuan, you can talk about the Tai Chi and the yin and yang. So I thought this trinity, this naturalistic trinity of Tai Chi, yin and yang, correspond closely with the Trinity theory of the God, the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit. Would you see some kind of correspondence there, or some kind of ambiguity over there? I mean, why you would prefer Trinity rather than the naturalistic Trinity rather than a personalistic Trinity. Now the difference is, to me, is because everybody has a choice to interpret their Trinity according to their personal history, not because there's any ultimate ontological grounding. So if you have a grounding to distinguish, to separate personalistic from the naturalistic, I think I like to learn a little more, because this is very crucial. I don't want to call Confucianism, atheistic. I think they are profoundly religious, but religious in a sense which may transcend the distinction between atheism and theism. So that is not possible for you to think. And also, ultimately could be both conscious and unconscious, both intentional and unintentional. So we need to open our mind to include these possibilities, which may also include some of the Mahayana Buddhistic approach. So that's my second comment, which I think with your wisdom, you might be able to say a few words.
Good. Well, thank you. I certainly was wrong in my understanding that this group would not have many serious metaphysicians. You are one of the most serious metaphysicians of philosophers any place in the world. And so I certainly appreciate that. Now, in this lecture, I did not mention Xunzi or his theory of ritual. I did mention that in a previous lecture and talked about that at greater length. The problem with global Christianity is how continuous the rituals are from one community to the next. There, I don't have any a priori pronouncement. I think that it's just very difficult to trace those rituals. The 6 senses that I had of Confucianism are, I think, valid, and they can be ritualized, but also they can not be ritualized. And so I really wonder a lot about the Chinese economic missions in Africa right now. There are Confucians among the people there, but what do they do? Do they hold only to the economic interests of Beijing, or are they adopting the African images? So I really don't know how far to press that. I do want to say that our society as a whole is built up out of more or less common uses of rituals. Rituals are diverse and sometimes contradictory, but they're I would take the rituals that have to do with economics and family life and the relation of the inside the family to the neighborhood to be the most important ones. Now, about the creator. You hold, I suppose, that if you have a creator creating, there must be an independent creator. And that's what I deny. So I would go along with Whitehead and other people to say that there is a creator only when there is actual creating. just as there's an actor only when there is actual acting. We don't say, well, actually, lots of people do say, but I think they're mistaken here, that you don't have action without an actor. And I say you don't have an actor unless there's action. So that's my response to the issue about creation. I would say that the creator exists only in the actual creating, so that there is no antecedent dimension prior to that. As to whether or not you could work out a trilogy to be common to Christianity and Confucianism, I really don't know. It seems to me there are many different conceptions of the Christian Trinity and many different conceptions of an ontological trilogy in Confucianism. So I'm sure that you could work out parallels, but you could work out very great differences as well.
Great. I think, it's a very good conversation when you two great researchers. But we are going to maybe arrange another meeting. That's the three, including Dr. Cheng and Dr. Zheng from Big Island. Maybe someday you can three of you sit down to discuss. But today's lectures is some more like a documentary about your works and your life. So actually, just early this month, I saw a book, see on the right hand. The primary philosopher of Yijing actually is Dr. Cheng's work, and then you forwarded by Dr. Navi. So that's a great one. I think now we can move on take the questions about the others.
Okay, Liangqi, can I make some comments?
Yeah.
Dr. Neville, actually, it seems that you confused the November lecture with today's lecture. Today's lecture is more biographical, but it's okay. Your lecture is always good. It's always good. So, but I do have I have a question I want to ask you, and it is a kind of a question I have pondered for a while about Chinese philosophy. There are three locus of creativity in Chinese philosophy, which is the heaven, the earth, and humanity. It's just like the Chinese philosophical trinity. So they are the source of creativity. So according to your theory, if God is creativity, God, not God and creativity, God is equal to, God is creativity. The synonym, creativity is just a synonym to God. So which means that there's God in heaven, in earth, and in human being. So it seems that this version of God is very immanent, not very transcendent or ultimate. And do you have any comment? Did I misunderstand?
No, I think you understood very well. I think that given the three great forces of heaven, earth, and the human, assuming that's a sustainable distinction, God has to be behind that and within that, but not anything that transcends it. So if you were to take away all the things that God creates, including heaven, earth, and the human, there would be nothing left over. So I do have a very immanent natural sense of God. And I don't find that to be incompatible with what Christians say either.
Hmm.
So
Yes. So according to the model, then because these three creativity, sometimes creativity, heaven, earth, and humanity. So they are many, they are multiple. So from the philosophical standpoint of one, the issue of one and many, they have to be go back into one. They have to have a common source. Do you
Right.
think there is creativity transcendent beyond heaven, earth, and humanity? That's the source of all these three things, three creativity. So there is a creativity behind these three locus of creativity. Am I understanding correctly?
yes, I do, but it's not. It does not transcend them. So it is just the creation of those three together,
Okay.
and without anything transcending that, in my view.
Okay. So according to philosophical theology, then your view more is closer to pantheism than panentheism. Do I understand correctly?
It is, though I don't much like those terms.
Okay.
Yes, it's closer to pantheism, not panentheism.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So another question, Liang Jie, if you allow me to answer another question, because I've been wrestled there for a while. So creativity, being, and nothingness, these three concepts. So which one is more ultimate? Seems I have wrestled with the ultimacy between creativity and nothingness. Which one is more ultimate? Because we call things call things out of nothingness, and it's a creativity out of nothing, creatio ex nihilo. So which one is more ultimate?
That's hard to say. I would say that the creator creating is the making of positive determinate things. And it's not calling these things out of nothing. It is just creating them. And so the difference between being and nothingness is not one that can be made out, I think.
So maybe if I understand you correctly, so from your perspective, nothingness is just a nominal term without reality linked.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Right. Good.
That's good. I'm going to speak Chinese, collect the Chinese question, and Dr. Xu Qiu is going to translate.
Of course I can do it.
First question is, 第一个问题是，你认为儒家是宗教吗？
This might be an easy answer, an easy question, and you already answered it. Do you consider Confucianism a type of religion?
Yes, I do. Yeah, but I think that there are three main religious traditions that have affected and interacted and created the world. One of them, or two of them, are personal. The Western is that of an active agent, and the South Asian is that of consciousness. The third religion is naturalistic in its metaphors, and it's what I talked about this evening. But they're all religious. To be religious is to have cognition about what's ultimate. It's to have existential matters determining your own life and perhaps the life of your community. And thirdly, it's to have practices that exist so as to relate you better to ultimacy. But Confucianism and Taoism and Moism and every other Chinese religion is a religion.
Okay.
Maybe it's in terms of belongs to the category of the naturalistic type.
Yes, I think that Confucianism and Taoism both do that, although there are plenty of references to gods in Taoism and so forth, but the gods are not ultimate, or the gods can be pushed toward becoming more ultimate.
梁姐，你要我翻译成中文吗？还是说我们就 document 一下
我们就这样到这里就行。
？OK， sure。
第二个问题就是按照墨家的看法他们经常他们是来自于儒家，但是他们经常讽刺儒家，他们这个祭神的时候并不是 serious 并不是认真的。您觉得这个现在的这个儒家他提到的所谓的神、所谓的上帝、所谓的宗教，它的终极你认为是不是严肃的，是 serious？
Dr. Neville, they have a question about the seriousness of the concept of ultimacy in Confucianism. The question springs out of observation from Moism. Someone considered Moism as originated from Confucianism, but yet they ridicule the Confucianism in terms of their filial piety, worship, ancestor worship kind of rituals. So do you think that the contemporary Confucianism, they are serious about all these rituals, all these religious rituals, or just something symbolic, something for some purpose, like a facade behind the real intention, or it's just in Chinese it maybe just called 神道社教, which means it's just for the purpose of educating the ignorance.
Right. I think for contemporary Confucians, a lot of the rituals having to do with religion are in fact just rituals and don't have any real relation to what's ultimate. But for some, there is a real intention of grasping what's ultimate. And those are the people that I'm speaking of here. I think the same is true in Christianity. And when you go to a Christian church, you go through a liturgy. And the liturgy means something to some people and doesn't mean much to other people. So I think that all Christian liturgies are not religious. Only some of them are. Yeah. The same thing is true for Confucius.
Professor Chong is here. Professor Chong, I just want to connect you with my Dr. Vada, Dr. Neville, and you probably know each other fairly well. And I just want you to carry a conversation about the concept of Nirvana, a concept of nothingness, because you're an expert on Chan Buddhism. So what do you think about the Buddhistic concept of Nirvana in relating to Dr. Neville's concept of creativity?
Well, in Chinese Buddhism, Nirvana somehow in the beginning was looked upon by Neo-Confucianists as a symbol of extinction. So the reason they opposed to Buddhism is because they are anti-life. So the Song and Ming, Neo-Confucian are generally opposed to that. Of course, in the Chinese Chan Buddhism, where the stress is on this enlightenment, that it's not just the purpose of enlightenment is to get to enlightenment to a Nirvana, but rather to identify the ultimate, the true reality. The true reality is to be identified with this world as well. That is, there is a liberation of your mind, that you have open to a more creative understanding, which is not bound by any language system, but rather something that you can become inspired, and you can become so-called enlightened, so that you get more freedom, more genuine life quality. So that's the quality which you're looking for. So in that regard, Neo-Confucian, has been influenced by Chan Buddhism. Neo-Confucian is looking for something, deeply real and deeply dynamically real, and therefore something which can resolve conflicts and can give life the ultimate meaning. So therefore, that's how the two become reconciled. So I always distinguish Indian Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism, even Indian Mahayana Buddhism and Chinese Mahayana Buddhism, as Tiantai Huayan and Chan, particularly Chan, which is in a way embodied by Taoism, by naturalistic Taoism like Zhuangzi. So freedom, free roaming, and a spirit of liveliness and openness. So that's the point. I mean, that open mind.
Yeah.
That's good. I think probably you need to distinguish. We have two Dr. Chen.
You're right. We actually are very blessed with this small group. We have 3 world-class minds here, and they are all just distinguished philosophers. It's such an occasion that we do not see very often. And also, I just want to ask Professor John Chen. You're an expert in Madhyamaka Buddhism and Chan Buddhism. About you wrote a book on the concept of Buddhist doctrine of nothingness. So, do you want to make any comments in responding to Professor Zhong Chen's comments or Professor Neville's lecture? You have to unmute yourself. Professor John Chen, you have to unmute yourself. We cannot.
你的话筒没打开。Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I joined your meeting late because I'm away in LA. I'm sorry for missing, many important, lecture given by Professor Neville. Sorry about this. According to my understanding, early Buddhism, Nirvana is different from samsara. Samsara is different from Nirvana. However, under the influence of different cultures from West, Persian culture, Greek culture, even from Christian culture, gradually Nirvana is samsara, and samsara is Nirvana. Okay. And as far as that the development of the Buddhism in China from Central Asia, and the development of Buddhism directly from India, the concept of Nirvana and Samsara also different. So when you want to talk about how the Buddhists talk about Nirvana, well, it depends which Buddhist school we are talking about. As far as the Zen Buddhism is concerned, because Zen Buddhism is synodization of Indian Buddhism, or Confucianization of Indian Buddhism. So gradually, Nirvana, distinction between Nirvana and Samsara is not that obvious. So we cannot just use the idea of being and non-being to discuss about the relationship with Nirvana and Samsara. And their relationship is not about ontological issue or metaphysical issue. Gradually, they become social, even family or personal relationship. So in Zen Buddhism, Nirvana is a samsara, samsara is a nirvana. It's quite different from Tentai or Huayan and Buddhist viewpoint. Tentai and Huayan are more metaphysical, are much influenced from the Buddhism introduced to China through Central Asia. But the Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, is directly from India to China. So what is a good life? Every day is a good life. What is a bad life? Every day is a bad life. Depend upon your mental attitude. So this is the emotional, or this is the personal perception, rather than the ontological issue about being and non-being. Okay, that is my understanding.
Oh, great. So, 我们今天是太荣幸了，有3位这个大学者在我们中间，所以这机会都非常难得。所以有些问题呢，我们问了，正好你们3个人可以各说一个。在这个有一个就是先是问那个 Dr. Neville， 在中国的诸子百家当中，你认为你和谁最接近？是荀子啊，还是孔子啊，还是孟子，还是子思？这个问题就是比如说，当然不一定是完全的认同，但是你认为你和谁比较接近？比如说我个人，我是主要认同墨子，我虽然从孔子那里学了很多东西，但是我更认同墨子。徐老师你要 unmute。
我没听懂你的问题，你说一下你的问题。
我的问题就是在诸子百家当中，你和谁的这种思路最接近？
我还是比较接近这个，就是从孔子到中庸到孟子，但事实上我是比较出于一个统一、开放、统一这样一个概念，就是这些观点到后来都应该活在一个开放、统一的一个系统之中，这就是义，我对义的本身的一个 deep 的一个感受，也就是这里又可以identify with 这个 Whitehead 的那种 creativity 的这个the deep open creativeness of life and reality.
陈老师，
That take to be my more Confucian view.
让徐老师给翻译一下。
Okay. Yes, I will translate for Dr. Neville, Professor Neville. About someone would like to know, among all the 100 schools in the Warring State period, which one do you identify most closest, you identify with, either Confucianism or 荀子 or 子思, Confucius' grandson, or Mozi, which school do you identify with?
In my last 10 years effort, I have tried to track down the very beginning, the origin of Chinese philosophy. I believe each philosophical thought tradition, has some kind of beginning in some kind of, activities of our mind, such as observation and certain consciousness. So I see eventually a certain understanding of reality in which man and nature are quite unified, and that I think was to be evidenced by the tradition of the Yi. The term the Yi, maybe just translated as change, but in a deeper sense can be translated as just creativity. So I take that to be something very fundamental, which then diverged into Confucianism, which stresses human consciousness and human effort, and Taoism, which stresses conformity to nature and profound awareness of nature. And then everything will follow according to each focus, each difference, and then become the tradition of Confucianism and Taoism. Now within the Chinese Confucianism, of course, despite Xunzi being regarded as heterodox, but I agree with Bob that Xunzi is very important. He's a rationalist side. He's a rationalist side. He actually, in a way, he may be said to be Herod, Zhu Xi. You see that he stresses the rational order. He stresses the naturalistic understanding of the nature of a human being, and yet promote the deeper understanding, reason of the person, so that we can form a better understanding of everybody and also life. So the tradition is now like a seed, gradually developed, or like a river, started with brook, small stream of water, and become broadened to incorporate everything. Everything will be reinterpreted in terms of the primordial early experiences. So that's what I call ontohermeneutical, ontology, ontocosmology. So that's my position.
Okay, so let's Dr. Neville, can you give us which one you prefer?
Yes, the way I was using the word creator, I do not mean creativity within time. So it's nothing like Whitehead's creativity that embraces many into one, increasing the many by one, and so forth. I don't. You can call that creativity if you like, but it does not. And the same is true for at least half of the Tao Te Ching, where the Tao is continuous and is the mother of all things. But rather, what I mean by creativity is the creation of the whole, not at once, but the whole. And that means that when viewed within time, it appears as at once, but it's not really at a given time. At different times, creativity has different manifestations, but the creator itself creates the past, present, and future together. Togetherness is my word for what creativity embraces, what the creator embraces. And that I think you would find in Lao Tzu, in the nature that is that cannot be named, and Walby, and Zhou and other people.
Yeah, the person also wants to know about Dr. Neville, your preference among Xunzi, Mengzi, Kongzi, Mozi, all those 100 schools during the warring state period. Which one you identified most with?
I would identify most with the Confucian school, but if you're asking about the religion of Confucianism, not every Confucian has a serious religion. No, that's what I say, and that's fine. There are Confucians that dealt only with culture and literature and had no serious philosophy at all. So Confucianism, it's a confluence of many different factors that are held together by the 6 that I mentioned, that unite even those in the diaspora.
正好，郑老师。
Okay. Maybe let me follow up with a question. As far as I know, Professor Neville, you actually, at least when I was in Boston, you prefer to follow the route of Xunzi more
Yes.
than that of Mencius. Can you tell the audience why that's the case?
Yes, I think that of the two, Xunzi is much more realistic about rituals, and he sees that they are fundamentally important to the internal workings of a human being, whereas Mencius sees rituals as something that people enter into in order to express what is internal. And I think that that's a mistake. That the rituals form the innermost part of human beings, so that until babies are ritualized, they're not genuinely human. And so that's why I prefer Xunzi.
Okay.
Now,
In your term, ritual, in a sense, is ontologically significant.
who is?
Ritual is ontologically significant.
Yes, for Xunzi, and much less so for Mengzi.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Professor John Chen, do you want to say something?
Yeah. We got to know the Buddhism in China came to China in 2 major different periods. The first time is around 1st century AD. Okay, Donghan Monen, okay, later Han period. That Buddhism came from Central Asia. This Buddhism is quite metaphysical. Talk more about metaphysical issue. However, another new type of Buddhism developed in China that is from 6th century AD. Bodhidharma, okay, from India directly to China, and gradually developed to know as Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism is very different from Indian Buddhism. Zen Buddhism is synchronization of Indian Buddhism. They talk more about inner self, personal relationship, or if we use the Professor Neville, it's more like more Mencius rather than the other people or Shenzi. Okay, Shenzi is more about external, ritualistic, but Mozi pay more attention to inner self, okay? Whether you will get enlightenment or not, according to Mengzi and according to Zen Buddhism, okay? All depend on your mind. Your mind is not enlightened. You will be fooled by external ritual ceremony, even by scripture. If your mind is correct, you will moving around the scripture and ritual ceremony. I think this standardization of the Indian Buddhism pay more attention to personal, inner, psychological, inner issue, later on develop Neo-Confucianism from Ming Dynasty. That is the Yang Ming, Neo-Confucian. So we may say that Zhuxi Confucianism is influenced by early metaphysical, more metaphysical Indian Buddhism. But gradually, non-metaphysical become more essential. Mengzi's one become more essential than Sun Tzu one. Then so from Ming Dynasty, Wang Yang Ming, Confucianism, Neo-Confucian were developed. If we don't pay attention to different background, different development, different Indian Buddhism in China, we may not be able to quite understand the difference between Song Neo-Confucianism and Ming Neo-Confucianism. Okay, that is my understanding.
宋老师，你最喜欢哪一个诸子百家当中最接近于你的 ？Which one is more you prefer?
What? Which one is more what?
More prefer.
Oh, I think Confucianism developed very well. Okay, and I like Mengzi's development Confucianism. However, at the same time, I think Sun Tzu also is right, because more important message in Confucianism at the beginning talk about goodness and happiness of human being. The first statement of analytic, 学而时习之，不亦乐乎？有朋自远方来，不亦乐乎？ That's optimistic, okay? View of human nature, happy, and in a sense glorify the goodness of human nature. However, if you come to the end, okay, of analytic, the purpose of our education is to develop 圣人. What is a 圣人? 圣人遥也 that the last chapter of the analytic 认罪. That is what Sun Tzu emphasized. In that conclusion, we got to become a gentleman, 君子. 君子 is on the way to become 圣人. And who is a 圣人? 圣人 at the end of analytic is 承认自己不懂，承认自己罪恶的人。所以呢，要去治什么？最重要去治天命，不是靠你自己的 goodness, but you need the help from heaven.
That's good. So you like sounds like you like more 这个孟子and 荀子。
Actually, I think both of them are quite correct. If we study them together, you are understanding, okay, the consistency of the Confucius teaching. Optimistic about human nature and also pessimistic about human sage. Sagehood, okay, is to acknowledge the mistake.
OK， 徐老师，我还有一个 question 是关于是 是 for Dr. Neville， 你那个需要 unmute。我们读到你的那一本Eternity and Time Flow， 这本书里头提到，特别是你在40岁，你在40岁的时候 ，you have 你的一位女儿刚4个月就去世了。那你觉得这个人生的意义，比如说一个4个月的baby，和我们现在你们3位都已经活到80多岁了，要想一想这个人生的意义的话，你会觉得他们有什么 big difference， 很大的不同。
Professor Neville, someone asked you a question about the meaning of life because they read from your book, Eternity and Time's Flow. You revealed to them some biographical details about the death or the passing away of your daughter at the, like 4-month-old. It's a tragedy. And so it triggered you a lot of thoughts on the meaning of life. So the question is, between your daughter of 4-month-old and passed away, and some of us here maybe living over 80 years old, the span of life strikingly different. But what is the meaning behind these differences? Between 4-month-old and 80 years old, what differences will they make?
Well, it seems to me that there are 2 ways to answer that question. Obviously, the older you are, the more chances you've had to do things. And I'm quite on the track of Professor Chang Chung-Ying. He's older than I by a few years, but not that much older. We're both over 80. And we both have had long careers with many books and many conversations that I think are important. The other sense is the meaning of life that consists in living in the time that you have. And so our daughter, who's lived only 4 months, and probably was not all that conscious during much of that time. And I think that her parents and her church community were very, very important in determining who she was publicly. But the eternal sense is just to live in the time that we have. And her 4 months is just as important as my 80 some odd years. That's a little bit like the distinction that I drew in my lecture between the proximate values, approximately my 80 years, or back when I wrote that book, 70 years, were much more important than her 4 months. But ultimately, the value of her life was absolute, just as the value of my life is absolute. And to have more of it doesn't make much difference. So that's how I would answer that question. I don't know whether that's significant. It certainly is for me.
It's a great answer. So it's a great answer. So how how many months or 80 years old compared to the infinity,
Yes.
is equal 0. Divided by 4 months or 80 years old, divided by infinity, or it's 0. Yeah, that's at least, that's a kind of a very good answers. And also I have a classmate, he read some books of your books. He said, Dr. Neville is not just the dean of the theology or college. His belief is for real. And he know you also was a pastor. And his question is, as a dean, so you had taught a lot of students.
Right.
Some of them, you feel maybe, they take the belief is for real. Some of them, okay, just for a career.
Right.
What do you respond for those kind of college? And those kind of.
All of those are proximate concerns, the ones that you just now mentioned. And there are some of my students, like GQ, have gone on to very, very important careers. Others of my students flunked out right after they took my course, and didn't learn much of anything from me or from anybody else at the school. Those are distinctions that are to be observed, and those are valuable, important ones. But I don't know that which ones are ultimately important. Ultimately, the person who flunked out is just as real as those of us who have gone on for 80, 85 years, whatever.
Okay, that's great. So also I have a classmate bring a Chinese question. He's asking the question is, there is a lot of 很多教义 and like many systematic theology, and also there is a Bible. So as a Chinese, what do you think recommended like a Chinese college, directly read the Bible or just read the systematic theology? I don't know whether I make the question clear.
Oh, Professor Neville, I believe this is a question for you about like a theology 101 question. Someone would like to know they should start with reading the scripture directly or start with reading all these doctrinal loci in theology and systematic theology.
I think you have to read them all at once.
Okay.
All of them. And no matter where you are, you're behind. So you never have read as much as you should. Finally, you get to be my age, and it's not that important to read more as it once was. But it's you're still in the midst of your career. Of course, you should read the scripture, but how do you read the scripture without philosophical theology to interpret it? And so there are many levels of interpretation. So my answer is you should read all of them, and you're always behind in your reading.
It's great. So, 今天是太难得了，我们有一个非常重要的一个话题，就是一个礼。When I read your books, and I saw that when you connect your Christian and with Chinese, I mean like 宣知, the important word is kind of 礼 ceremony. It's the 礼. Actually, Dr. Zhang Cheng, his Chinese name is Li. Once I make a joke. I said, Dr. Zhang Cheng is still learning ceremony. That's his Chinese name. And that's his name. And I said, okay, Dr. Zhu, we have to work hard. And Dr. Cheng is very humble. So it's 80 years old, still learning. So, but the question is that I saw the Li is a connection of both your Confucius and your theology. Actually, the Li in the origin of the word is that the Li is the worship to the God originally. You see that it's put two important like a demon and put on the table, worship to the God. And also Li, also including law, including ceremony, including moral. So that's why I chose those words for you this one. And I would like to get both three of you get a response about the Li. What do you think of the Li it is?
Well, I think that when it comes to worship, God doesn't need it, of course. And so we do it for our own purposes. And sometimes the worship contains a really interesting sermon, and other times it doesn't at all. I have attended worship more or less regularly all of my life. But I also have a room where I keep photographs of my family. And so I am, which I am reverential to. I think that with regard to Buddhism, the several kinds that Professor John Cheng mentions, I don't do much Buddhist practice, except insofar as that's involved in Confucian practice. So.
Okay, good. So how about Dr. 钟英成？陈老师，你认为这个理字，我的
I think he does have, of course, deeper meaning than just ritualistic. You just quoted here that the Li maybe symbolize the orderliness of heaven and earth, maybe the setup of all things which result from the underlying creativity. So Li, I think, is important because we need to recognize differences and identities so that we can act in a way which preserve whatever value or good feelings we have. So Li certainly is very important. So therefore, I do agree with Bob that we need to think out the Li together with maybe righteousness and benevolence, because they're interlinking. They're linked. Li is the form. You use a Aristotelian idea. Li is the form, and the substance without the form, you won't be able to perform. You cannot sustain yourself. So these are essential. So therefore, I think the Li has a symbolic meaning today. So we need the proper Li. So Li is not just, just mechanically determined or determined once for all. Has to be adjusted all the time, to adjust for different reality and also to make it regulating new reality. So need is a challenge for our own creativity. I think that's it.
Okay, Dr. John Cheng. Every time I saw your name, I just remind me, be humble. And John Cheng is 80 years old and still learning Li. So I have to ask you to give a response.
Okay. according to my understanding, the essential message in Confucianism is to make human being as a human being. And not only ordinary human being, but become a sage. Human food, sage food, is something internal. However, you got to manifest internal human food, internal sage food, goodness of the sage food and human food in your external behavior, external social relationship. This appropriate manifestation of internal goodness is called Li. So Li is not the rituals, not just external rituals or external social or legal law, but rather is appropriate manifestation of inner, goodness. And this appropriate manifestation of internal goodness may variable, may change. For example, in the ancient time, we should make a sharp distinction between male and female. We should not touch each other. But now, it is okay. You can even kiss each other in the public, okay? So the appropriate manifestation in the goodness may subject to change. However, you should follow your internal goodness.
Thank you.
That is my understanding of 学理.
Okay, yeah, so that's why your names always remind us to be humble. Okay, so 徐老师，你在吗？ Okay, I have another slide actually. After I read Dr. Neville's book and several articles, and I wrote a poem for you. So, but I do need a good translator. So probably that will be hard for. I think I would, to make this good translate, and I think Dr. Zhixiu Xu will use other hairs of that.
I'll try.
Okay, the first is called, it's about the biography of Dr. Neville. The first is, let me put on Chinese and then Dr. Xu make it in English. 出生美国南北间 is born in 在南和北中间，少年老成乐好天，他14岁就开始学上帝的事，学海无涯山外山他读的书到现在还在读，野辱亨度礼恶善，礼恶善这可能是他最重要的3个 concept。然后中年丧女心碎处，他这个让他 heartbroken 这个但是呢他写了2本书关于这个的，叫福音文章广流传那2本书是比较好懂的。然后我感觉他这荀子的知己他有彻悟，他有自己的大彻大悟。然后时空飘逝到永远这是他的一本书的书名。OK，
Yeah, we'll translate that.
对。
Oh, it's very difficult to translate the poem. It's about biographical notes about Professor Neville, who was born in the midland of the United States, and was well learned from the beginning of his life, even in his youth years, and cultivated a optimistic nature, and just selling infinitely in the midst of academic career, and just unfold himself unpack himself, along the way. And he's good at being expert in both the Christianity and Confucianism, and learn across different concepts or categories of rituals and goodness, and all those metaphysical concepts. Bereaved at his middle age of the loss of his beloved daughter, heartbroken, and triggered him a lot of thoughts of the meaning of life. And he wrote a lot of articles, metaphysical and wonderful articles, to be carried down the time's flow in the future. And he's a truly intimate friend of Xuanzi, and who brought him the sudden awareness of truth, of Tao. And even though time and space will fade away, yet Tao will exist eternally.
Great. Thank you. It's a great interpret. And also there is another line. The line of this, his name is here.
Oh, okay. It's something in the middle. Oh, okay. Professor Neville, there is something, if you read across, we often read from up, down, and Dong Liangjie also inserted something in the middle, this line. Professor Neville with a ritualistic heart of deference has broadened the Tao.
Thank you for the interpretation. So I need to hear from Dr. Neville.
Did my translation make any sense?
Oh yeah, it's it talks about the good parts of my life. Does not talk about the bad parts of the life very much, but you don't need to talk about that tonight. So.
Professor Neville is truly humble. He is truly a gentleman. I was so impressed. Most influential figure in my life. I owe him. I owe you, Professor Neville.
Okay, it's great. It's about 2 hours, but I have another question. Last week, I have worked in the lab. We have a fire. And we have only 5 seconds and then leave. So I take my laptop out. So if someday we have to, get a space shuttle to leave on the Earth. So we have a limited time and limited luggage. But you have too many books. So if you only alone to bring 1 book, which book you are going to bring? Dr. Neville.
Well, I suppose I would leave my last book, which is The Metaphysics of Goodness. But that probably is just because it's the last book. I was talking with somebody else this morning who said that my first book, God the Creator, was my best book. And I suppose that in some ways that's true. I think the one that is closest to my heart is Eternity and Time's Flow, which comes from the middle and is it picks up on the most important things. So Eternity and Time's Flow is what I would take with me.
Okay, great. So I love that book too.
Okay, good.
Well, and also this question turned to Dr. Zhong Ying Cheng. So you have too many books. Which book you are going to bring to the space shuttle?
I don't have many English book.
Oh, I mean Chinese book too.
Well, I think I think so far, I think the primary way I have been working so long, but may not be the best work, but I'm writing something just called study of ontology and ontohermeneutics. I hope that would, become an English book. But anyway, it's hard to say.
No, you have to say you only have
I
5
publish
minutes.
it. Well, I publish the 10 volumes of my Chinese work, and I got 10 volumes of 10 books in English. Some are just some of them, I edit, but I have some important paper inside. I recently found that I published a book at the University of Hawaii Press. It's on unity and the identity of mind and body. And so that's certainly, I think.
Okay, the new book just published, and I showed you it's on Amazon now, forwarded by Dr. Neville. So this month, July 2nd, is available.
But I want you to say there's a good review, to my surprise, by somebody in the Journal of Chinese Philosophy recently. So the review, together with his perhaps forward, I think, make the book more clear.
Okay. So I'm going to get a copy of those new books, and because you're going to bring to the space shuttle if we have trouble. And this question turned to Dr. Zhang Cheng. So which book you're going to bring to the space shuttle? Is this book? If it's this book, I'm going to carry it.
Actually, I don't have to worry too much about which book or which article I want to keep, because they are all published, okay? They are all televised, okay? They are all online in a sense. So I don't worry, too much about which book or which article I should try to keep. And I think the more I live, the more knowledge I get, and my viewpoint may have to be changed or subject to change. So I'm wide open to improve my knowledge. So I don't worry too much about which book.
Well, I'm going to pick a book for you on the restaurant menu for you.
What?
Restaurant menu. Okay.
I think you are very interested in my, Zen, philosophy book.
Okay.
I think that is really a good book. And I believe that book will be popular among Chinese.
I love this book. I love this book. And also we're going to have you once have a lecture here, just talk about Chanmen Guan and your career or academy. So when you're back, when you come back. Because I need to sit down face to face with you. And we have a blackboard for you.
Thank you. Thank you for your reading. Thank you for your number one interest in my book. That one was published long time ago in English, but was translated into Chinese by the youngest Chinese philosopher in Peking University who obtained a PhD at the age of 24. Okay, he liked my book and he translated the book from English to Chinese. But I am not officially published that book yet. But I think since you are interested in that book, you're welcome to publish it. Now that translator Wang Bo actually is very well known in China. He is a vice president of Peking University right now.
So, okay, Dr. do you have any other questions?
I do not. I just learned a lot from today's lecture. I'm very grateful.
Thank you for all. That's really is really great. For actually today we have three of you with us, and actually any kind of classroom cannot have three of great researchers, scholars on here. So. So now we can end of this lecture, and we'll continue to work on that. And I think I love last time Dr. Zhongying Chen has make a very good conclusion poem that I need to share with you is that this one. So that's the one Dr. Chen. Zhongying Chen's conclusion. Maybe this is good for everyone, every religion. So no matter what kind of classic or Bible or Confucius, anything else, we have to take action on honest. So Dr. Chen, can you give your translation to these two sentences?
Translation, what the use of classic is intended for practice. So that's this spirit, the true spirit of the classic is to practice, to do something you understand. I mean, action is more important than writing.
Okay. So, Dr. Neville, would you like to give one sentence to fill our summary of this lecture?
Well, I think that I've learned a great deal from your comments. It's great to see some old friends and to reestablish connections that have been going, but still have a long way to go. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay.